I need something in me.
I'm going
I don't
to
know what that
spend
means. Sorry.
a lot of time muted tonight.
Okay, we're live. Hello, everyone in the chat room, the Chatterama.
Hello.
Hi,
Hey.
Chatterama.
Hey, guys.
Yeah, I'll have a quick drink.
There we go. I don't have any liquids.
Yeah, neither do I.
No liquids. We're going to talk about liquids.
Are we?
Kind of.
Yes, we are.
Mm.
Oh,
And-
yeah,
and
and
potty
bladder
breaks.
control. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Delta P.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You need to be a
I have that.
Vistler
Good enough, ready to
because
go.
our dogs have incredible bladder control. There's no doubt about it. They particularly the bitch, Rusty. She will look out the door, having not been out all evening, and if it's look a bit wet and a bit nasty, she'll go, "Now wait till tomorrow."
Yeah, it's fine. I can go another 12 hours. It's
Yeah,
nothing.
exactly. How does she
Oh.
do that? I go, really?
Yeah, let's watch all the language, okay, Nick?
Family show, ladies and gentlemen. Family show.
It's proper
Okay.
terminology.
I know it is. Well, just in case people tune in right when he says that word,
Yeah.
they might take it out of context. You never know.
Are you winding a clock?
Yeah,
No,
what are you
I'm
doing
not.
there, Nick?
My pop filter's creaky. Have you noticed that?
I was trying to figure out where that was coming from.
I didn't realize till just a second ago. That's really quite amusing, isn't it? I can do that all night.
It might be amusing to you,
Of course, it's
not to
amusing to him.
us. Everything's amusing to you.
Yeah, well, that's very true. I like to see the funny side of life
Yes,
if I possibly can.
me too. That's a good thing to have. Uh-oh. He just took himself out.
Hi, Nick.
Oh, hi. What happened
Hi,
there?
Nick. I don't know. You removed yourself.
Oh, is
Who's
somebody
doing
else
that?
removing him?
Stop messing me about.
Is it Steph that's doing it?
Yeah, I'm not doing anything. I'm still trying to
Must
find
be
that
Dana.
meme we were
No,
talking
my hands
about.
are right here. I'm not doing a damn thing.
All right, that's it. Who
No
was
touching.
it?
No touching.
You rotten lot.
Uh-huh.
Okay. All righty. Let's see here. Let me get the show notes up.
Yes, Mike, it was. I am wearing this in tribute to Miami Rick, but he's not going to be on tonight. So I'm thinking of putting something else on.
should.
Yeah, and Rick has some issues going on with some construction at his place, and so he's not able to make it today. What we may do, I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to do a little bit shorter show today, and then probably do an hour or less with Rick tomorrow. So
Sounds good.
He just doesn't like to be around us.
Apparently not. Yeah.
Me especially, because I have the corona.
He's shy with crowds. So those cargo boys, they don't like lots of passengers.
That's true.
They only have a big crew, or anything. There's usually only a few of them. So there you go.
Oh, there's the problem-solving meme.
Mhm.
Okay. Interesting. All right. I'll take a look at that after the show. I'm not going to be distracted by that. Not going to be distracted by that. Let's see. So yes, as you can see, Dana does have the coronavirus, apparently. The corona extra virus.
I get the corona extra virus.
It's even worse than the coronavirus.
It is.
Right.
And Nick appropriately has it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just being transmitted across the airwaves.
Okay, let's see. Here, and let me make sure everybody, you could hear all those sound effects I was doing before, right? The bell and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And how about this?
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
Yep.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Sounds good.
Very
to me.
good. Very good. That is going to be our intro from Radio Roger. And what else? Anything else? Oh, recording. We need to make sure that we're recording. So turn your recorders on.
Where did it go?
Yeah.
I never have problems with this, I promise.
No, you
Always
never,
works
ever.
smoothly
ever.
and seamlessly, and I never record for weeks on end by mistake.
No. I'm surprised you have enough hard drive space for
This is why my
that.
computer doesn't work anymore.
That might be why. Okay.
Hey, look at that. It's recording. All right.
Yay.
No idea if the settings are correct or not, but whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. And I'm up here in the International
A new
Space Station, I
version
think.
of Audio Hijack is ready to install.
Really?
It's
No
recording
way.
right now.
Elizabeth II. APG 420. 420. Dude.
Mhm. Now I really know why he's all spaced out. What?
All right. Ready? Recorder's on. APG 420 in 3, 2, 1.
It's not September though, Nick. You got the date wrong again.
It's not September 4th or 5th. 5th. Yeah.
Fourth.
No, 4th.
Yeah, he even put the wrong month on there too. You can't.
Did he?
Even, yeah, he did. Let's see that again. We can't hear you because you're muted.
Yeah,
but-
you're muted.
You're muted. That's good.
I just need all three of you to say it together. Then I'll get the idea.
Well, apparently so.
He
Oh,
even had the
I've
wrong.
got the wrong month.
Yes.
January,
let's try this
February,
again.
March, April. Oh, 4. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
No one knows what day it is anymore.
No one reads
No.
it.
Does anybody really know what time
I
it
read
is?
it.
Oh, except Ken. Oh, Ken. Nerd.
Nerd. Okay. Here we go. Liz, good? Looks like we're starting about 8 after. Here we go.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
The view from our side of the cockpit door.
WAPG, it's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy episode 420.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy show, the view from our side of the cockpit door, with your host, Captain Jeff, broadcasting live from Studio 1A, the socially distant APG headquarters in Roswell, Georgia. Today's show is recorded on the 9th of April, 2020.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Get you right and it's flying by with the Airline Pilot Guy.
In today's episode, new information on a Shanghai Airlines tail strike in China. 30,000 Boeing employees face unemployment because of COVID-19. More news, your feedback, and in today's Plane Tales, the Battle of Ashau. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in the upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. I'm Radio Roger. Flight 420 is ready for pushback.
Thank you, Radio Roger. He's an Emmy Award-winning TV and radio reporter, currently at the #1 all-news station in the nation, 1010 Wins in New York City. Welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, an aviation podcast covering the latest in aviation news and answering your great feedback. I'm Captain Jeff. Used to be in the Air Force and now a captain for a major legacy airline based in Atlanta, Georgia, which we like to call here Acme Airlines. And joining me today from her lakeside home in the Carolinas, doctor, skydiver, marathon runner, strength training junkie, IPA connoisseur, and commercial multi-engine instrument-rated pilot, Dr. Steph.
Hey, Captain Jeff. It is so great to see you guys today. Really looking forward to today's show.
Great to see you as well. And also joining us from his studio in the English countryside, professional photographer, former RAF, RAAF fighter pilot, retired captain for an international airline based in London, it's Captain Nick.
Good evening, Jeffrey. Lovely to be joining you from the United Kingdom on a beautiful day. Such a shame we're stuck indoors.
Yes, it is a shame. And also joining us from the northwest Atlanta suburbs, barbecue master, motorcycle rider, pleasure boat skipper, underwater photographer, and captain, for a major U.S. legacy carrier, and apparently he has just been diagnosed with COVID-19. Captain Dana.
Hello, guys. It's not the COVID-19. It's
Oh,
the
no, it's
Corona Extra.
The Corona Extra virus.
That's right. So
You'd have to
it has
see him on the
nothing.
video.
Has nothing to do with the virus. It has everything to do with my getup today. But great to be here, and just wanted to bring some cheer and happiness to everybody. I know during these bad times. So let's have some
Excellent.
fun.
Let's do that. All right. And before we have too much fun, let's go ahead and start off with the news.
Stand by for news.
All right. First, I'll say two of the stories that we're going to talk about in the news today are actually accidents that occurred quite some time ago. The first one is an example of that. This happened nearly 10 years ago. And this is from Venezuelan accident investigatory agency that apparently had their accident investigation website offline for many years. And Simon over at the Aviation Herald finally, just a few days ago, got reports on some of these accidents. This first one is a Conviasa Aerospatiale ATR-42 300, registration Yankee Victor 1010, performing flight 2350 from Porlamar to Puerto Ordaz in Venezuela with 47 passengers and 4 crew. Impacted ground about 9 kilometers, 5 nautical miles from the airport of Puerto Ordaz while attempting an emergency landing. 17 people, including the captain, first officer, 1 flight attendant, perished, and 34 people survived with injuries of varying degrees. The local governor of the state of Bolivar said in the afternoon Venezuelan time that the crew reported control problems while on approach arriving from Porlamar, and then loss of control shortly before impact. Ground witnesses reported that the airplane attempted to return to the airport but got entangled with a high voltage line before impacting ground. Although the airplane fell into a crowded area, there have been no casualties and injuries on the ground. On the 4th of April 2020, this is where Simon kind of pimps the Venezuelan government. After the Venezuelan website for the accident investigation came back online after a few years, the Aviation Herald got a hold of the final report in Spanish, dated December 31st, 2015. Okay, a quick pause. Are we having issues with my signal?
I'm having no issues.
Okay.
Only to me, you're all a bit Skypey, so I suspect it's me.
Yeah, I was
okay.
going to say, Jeff, you're perfectly fine.
Okay.
Carry
Thank
on.
you. Just wanted to make sure. I sometimes see these little alerts coming in the upper right-hand corner of my screen, and I try not to look at them because sometimes it's really a big mistake for me to look at them. But I thought maybe I should. I keep seeing a bunch of them, so I'm thinking maybe something's going wrong. Okay. Anyway, the report mentioned, I guess, the JIAAC, which is the investigatory agency in Venezuela, concluded that the probable cause of the accident was the malfunction of the centralized crew alert system, the CCAS/CAC, with erroneous activation of the stall warning system. So here's the narrative. The JIAAC reported that the crew had already flown 2 sectors on the accident aircraft that day. The aircraft departed for the accident flight with 47 passengers and 4 crew. After departure from Porlamar, the aircraft climbed to flight level 150, deviated around weather en route, and was 64.1 nautical miles away from Puerto Ordaz when the crew alerted Maquieta or Maquisha. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. You have any idea, Steph? Maquieta.
Maquieta.
Hold on. I say Maquieta. Maquetia.
All right, we're going to call it M control
My kitty.
of a control problem and requested to descend to flight level 110. M control alerted Puerto Ordaz Tower via telephone about the incoming emergency aircraft. Descending through flight level 135, the crew reported on Puerto Ordaz's tower frequency, requesting priority and stating they had a failure in the controls. Tower advised runway 7 was active and cleared the flight to fly directly to Puerto Ordaz. 20 nautical miles from Puerto Ordaz, the crew reported they were descending through flight level 060, 6,000 feet, heading directly towards runway 7. 15 nautical miles from the airport, the crew called Mayday, Mayday, Mayday at about 3,000 feet. Tower radioed acknowledgement of the Mayday, but did not receive any response. The crew of another aircraft asked for help by Tower was not able to establish contact either. An aircraft waiting for takeoff on the ground at Puerto Ordaz informed Tower smoke was rising in the approach path of runway 7. Tower requested the airborne aircraft that had attempted to establish contact to overfly the scene, and the crew confirmed that an aircraft had crashed at the location that was on fire. Tower immediately activated the airport's emergency response, prepared for aircraft accidents. The captain was 62 years old, air transport pilot license. They're not sure how many hours he had total and hours on type because there were no records found prior to 2006. He was assisted by a first officer, 38 years old, commercial pilot license, 1,038 hours total, 483 hours on type. The aircraft had been built in 1994 and registered in Venezuela for Conviasa in November of 2006. The JIAAC analyzed in the final minutes that the crew received an oral cricket sound, or here, oh, I can do that right here, right? I have a cricket, I think. Yeah, never mind. Here we go. I don't think it's probably like that. Some kind of a sound that sort of sounds like crickets, which is the stall warning, as well as the stick shaker activation. The first officer called, "Wait, wait," and pushed the control column forward. The captain pulled the control column back in order to prevent the aircraft from descending. The aircraft was flying at a normal speed and in a normal attitude at the time. The warning should not have been activated as the aircraft was not close at all to any boundary of the flight envelope. The first officer called, stick shaker, go. Stop the stick shaker, go." The captain replies, "It is faulty." The first officer subsequently noticed the amber fault light on the stick shaker had activated and replied, "Okay, go on, pull." The JIAAC analyzed the fault light of the stick shaker, indicated a malfunction of the CAC computer. The procedures would require to press the fault light, which would deactivate the stick shaker and stick pusher. The captain instructed the first officer to press that light. However, the warnings continued. If the button was indeed pressed by the first officer, that means that there was a fault condition and that was still present and was intermittent. The CAC monitors both angle of attack vanes and compares them. If a difference of more than 4 degrees exists between them, an according fault condition is generated. If that fault condition does not exist, the values of both AOA vanes are averaged. If that value exceeds the critical angle of attack, the stick shaker is activated. 24 seconds after the stick shaker activated, the pitch controls were activated. The pitch controls were decoupled, and the according warning, the left and right pitch controls were disconnected, sounded. Each pilot was now controlling the elevator of his side. Captain, the left elevator; first officer, the right elevator. The investigation assumes that the controls were disconnected because both pilots provided different inputs on the pitch. This would require the pilots to coordinate so that the elevators are moved in sync. However, the situation was complicated by the fact that the pilots were fighting each other, providing counteracting control forces. The captain applied significant efforts and force to maintain level flight. Post-impact investigation revealed the stick pusher on the left side was in a nose-down position. Several simulations at the aircraft manufacturer revealed that due to the force applied onto the elevator, it was impossible to maintain level flight with the stick pusher activated. Simon adds to this report, again, from the Aviation Herald. The report does not really make clear what caused the final departure from level flight. The first officer reacted to the stall warning, pushed the yoke forward. The captain pulled against and tried to explain to the first officer that the stall warning was faulty. The first officer subsequently discovered the stick shaker fault light, but from there, it is unclear whether he stopped pushing the controls forward. In the analysis section, but not the factual section, the nose down position of the stick pusher is mentioned, as well as the simulator tests conducted at the manufacturer, which raise indeed the impression with me, Simon, that in the end, the Mayday call occurred when the stick pusher activated and they went down as a result. It remains unclear whether the stall fault light button was pressed or whether the fault was intermittent and persistently recurring. I read the contributing factors in the conclusion as the button was not pressed. Wow, what a crazy accident here. And again, it's all about, and this seems to be a recurring theme, confusion about what the state of the aircraft is in, and getting a warning, a false warning, and reacting to the warning without really stepping back and thinking about what is happening with the airplane.
Yeah, but only one of them seemed to have done that. The captain seemed to have a pretty good grasp on what was going on, but he seemed unable to convince his first officer that he had the situation under control. And it obviously ended up with them both fighting with the controls to the point where they disconnected the elevators and had one each. And I have no idea why you would design an aircraft to do that. I guess there must be some reason for it, but at the moment it escapes me. But considering they weren't acting in harmony, once that happened, I can't see them being able to coordinate those two elevators to keep the aircraft under control. So a dreadful conclusion, but it just goes to show that if you don't have trust and you don't have the ability to communicate with the guy beside you, then things can escalate really quickly.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, the pilot in command is the pilot in command, unless he's doing something completely erroneous. The first officer should do exactly what they're supposed to do, and that is state their opinion and move on from there. But the captain obviously had it under control, and the first officer felt that he was empowered to try to take control of the aircraft for some reason. I don't know what his thinking is there.
And we don't actually have the transcripts. I didn't actually read, of course, I don't read Spanish either, so I couldn't really read the accident report in Spanish. But I gather from the fact that it's not mentioned in this article on the Aviation Herald that at no point did the captain say, "I have the airplane, I have the aircraft, let go of the controls. I have," I think that if that had happened, I think we wouldn't be reading about this.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it's an extremely good point. Why on earth, when he felt the first officer come onto the controls with him and start opposing him, unless he misunderstood what was happening, didn't realize that the first officer was also trying to put an input in, then that would be my first reaction. Why are you trying to fly the airplane? I have control. That would be the first thing I'd be shouting at him.
Relinquish the controls. Let go of the controls.
Yeah.
I have the airplane.
I'd pull out Dana's baseball bat and give him a whack over the head with it.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah. It would have been over real quick if I was a captain. Let me tell you.
Yeah, good man.
But,
And
leave it alone.
Am I understanding this right? Because they did not press the button to discontinue the warnings that continued to allow the stick shaker and stick pusher to activate. That was okay.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think the stick pusher, I guess, has so much authority that
they couldn't overcome
the captain
it.
couldn't. Yeah. And of course, he was only using the left elevator. So I'm thinking, if you have like the elevator on one side going up and the other going down, I mean, would that cause some kind of a rolling moment as well? It seems like
Probably.
It would.
I wouldn't have thought there would be enough. They're not very far out, are they?
Okay,
They're
so
only
maybe
like
not
10 feet out compared.
So
with
basically, they'd be
radar.
like canceling each other, perhaps.
Yeah, I think a bit like in the Airbus. If one pilot pulls back, the other guy pushes forward. The control inputs are summed, so that nothing happens. It would be a similar thing, except aerodynamic rather than through a computer.
I just want to pick up on something you said, Nick, and that is, why would an airplane have the ability to break away controls from each side? And that is...
please explain if you know.
Yeah, well, it's true with our aircraft, too, on the 88 and 90. You can go ahead, the 90... Let me step back on that one. The 88 for sure. The 90, I cannot remember, to be honest with you right now. But yeah, you can break if you have jam cable. All right, so you can break away the side and be able to actually control. And it's a lot of pressure. I think it's like 70 pounds.
Yeah, a lot of
remember.
force.
Yeah, a lot of force, 70, 75 pounds worth of force. But you can break it away so that way you can still fly the aircraft with one of the control columns. And a lot of the older aircraft, I'm trying to remember the Brasilia. I think the Brasilia were able to do that. Yeah, a lot of the older.
If you got a jam cable, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I think all the conventionally controlled airplanes do that. Even I think the 727 did. I'm not sure about the L-1011. I don't remember.
Well, I've never flown one of those conventional airplanes. What are conventional airplanes? You mean old ones?
Yeah.
He's so
well, you've flown
unconventional.
old airplanes.
You're an old man. You should have flown old airplanes.
Yeah, he's pretty old, so that would be appropriate.
Okay. Are we finished with this one?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just taken a long time to get to us. I'm glad finally they found out what happened.
Yeah, me too. And we have not this one, but you know what? Let's do this. Let's go to C, because that's also another accident that occurred in Venezuela, and also another one that occurred quite some time ago. This one was on the 21st of February 2008. So that was even longer ago than the one we just talked about. Again, Simon mentions that he didn't get this information until the 4th of this month. Let's see. The JIAAC Venezuela conclude the probable causes of the crash. Is there? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I must have cut out what actually happened here. Let me see. Okay, 40 minutes prior to scheduled departure of Flight 518, the traffic department ordered the boarding of Flight 518 to commence without consulting and release by the flight or cabin crew. Neither flight crew nor cabin crew were on board. 4 minutes later, so I guess they're boarding passengers and none of the crew are on the airplane. 4 minutes later, the flight attendant arrived at the aircraft. 7 minutes prior to scheduled departure, the flight crew entered the cockpit. Okay, think about that. 7 minutes prior to the scheduled departure, the flight crew entered the cockpit and immediately turned the battery switch on, skipping the checklists for final cockpit preparation and the before checklists. 2 minutes later, the crew requested engine start, which was authorized. However, the engines were already running at the time, according to the cockpit voice recorder. That's weird. Who started the engines? That's weird. 2 minutes and 42 seconds after the cockpit crew entered the cockpit, tower cleared the aircraft to taxi. And with an incoming aircraft out at 8 nautical miles, tower instructed the aircraft to expedite taxiing. Okay, so you see the setup. They just show up and they get on the airplane, and less than 3 minutes has elapsed since they gotten on the airplane, and they're getting clearance to taxi to the runway. While taxiing, the captain, 37 years old, air transport pilot license, 5,053 hours total, 3,883 hours on type, recognized they had not aligned the AHARS, the Attitude Heading Reference System, for not being stationary for 3 minutes, and voiced concern. However, he decided to reset the AHARS in flight and in the meantime continue with visual operation. According to the manual of the Honeywell AHZ 6000 system, in use, takeoff in basic flight mode. Okay, that was the system in use. Takeoff in basic flight mode with AHARS inoperative is not recommended. 4 minutes after the flight crew entered the cockpit, the flight crew is cleared for takeoff from runway 24. The captain again emphasized that the AHARS is in fault mode and that they would realign it once they were airborne. Again, which is not recommended by the manual by Honeywell. Following departure, the flight climbed in a left turn according to the visual procedures for departure from Merida. While in the 180-degree turn, the captain read the after takeoff checklist and reminded the first officer, a 27-year-old commercial pilot with 2,112 hours total, 602 hours on type, reminded him again that the AHARS is offline. The autopilot is not operative, and the first officer needs to fly manually and visually. The aircraft climbed through 10,457 feet MSL and entered into clouds. Now they were fully in instrument meteorological conditions.
What part
IMC.
of visually did he not understand?
I don't know. It's kind of hard to fly visually when you're
My
in
eyeballs are
arms.
still open, so visual.
Yeah, I'm
With-
visual with the flight deck.
with an AHAR system that is not
Working or
working.
Not properly aligned.
not aligned. Yeah.
Tower instructed the flight to call observation as the aircraft was not on its planned departure route. The captain handled the call. Shortly afterwards, the GPWS sounds terrain, pull up, just when the first officer reported a heading of 073 degrees. 30 seconds after the first alert, the GPWS sounded the long alert, terrain, pull up, and two more of those. The captain took control of the aircraft. The first officer recognized they were not heading 073 degrees, but 318 degrees, and were on a wrong course. The first officer also recognized the gravity of the alarm. Another 15 seconds later, the GPWS sounded too low, gear. The first officer again mentioned they were on the wrong course. Of course, it doesn't say anything about them doing anything
To try and correct their course or
to
get away
pull
from
up.
the terrain or nothing.
None of it. No. Another 6 seconds later, the GPWS sounded terrain, and now continuously calls pull up. The aircraft is being pulled up and turned right, finally. The stick shaker activated. The aircraft impacted Los Conejos at an altitude of 12,499 feet, MSL, at 107 knots indicated after 7 minutes and 15 seconds flight time. The aircraft came to rest at an altitude of 12,240 feet. All 43 passengers and 3 crew perished in the impact. So let's see, the JIAAC analyzed that the passengers were already on board the aircraft when the flight crew entered the cockpit. Due to the resulting pressure, the flight crew did not carry out the corresponding checklists before takeoff, which would have made them aware to wait 3 minutes for the AHARs to align. According to the manual, the alignment begins as soon as the battery switch is turned on and takes about 3 minutes, during which the aircraft must remain stationary. According to the flight data recorder, the time between the battery switch coming on, the aircraft starting to move, the time between the battery switch coming on and the aircraft started to move was 2 minutes and 42 seconds, which was not enough time for the AHARs to align. So again, the tower says, you cleared a taxi, please expedite because there's a aircraft coming in on final. So more pressure to get airborne quickly. The captain handed the controls to the first officer, pilot flying, without consideration that they were flying with the AHARs inoperative. Subsequently, when the aircraft entered the cloud, the captain continued the flight under those conditions. Overconfidence in the crew and lack of identification of potential risks contributed that the captain underestimated the risk of takeoff in this unsafe condition. Now, part of the reason why this kind of sounds weird is that this is the translation from the Spanish to English. Wow. This blows me away. You're trying to
you just
rush.
can't defend any of that.
No, it's just stupid.
No,
I mean,
18 seconds. If they just sat there, I mean, you're never in such a hurry that you can't wait 18 seconds. What was the matter with these guys?
I mean, we've all had that kind of time pressure, but this is extreme. This is like, let's just run into the. Did they even have time to strap in? I'm wondering.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like they did anything by any normal checklist or procedure. They just kind of were freelancing it here, and that's what bit them in the butt.
Yeah, I mean, they were in the terminal for like 40 minutes doing what? And then they came out of the airplane just before departure and then suddenly realized, oh, we're late. And then completely contrary to everything that you would possibly imagine would be even approaching good airmanship, forced the aircraft into the air with, an attitude and reference system that wasn't aligned and was going to give them false information. I mean, I have no idea what was going through their heads.
I mean, and especially terrible in a location surrounded by high terrain. I think the city's at like 5,000 feet to begin with, and then you've got high mountain peaks around it, and obviously not complete, visual conditions.
Yeah.
Not that that's any excuse for them not following the original procedures anyway.
They have a graphic here that I turned clockwise 90 degrees because the way they had it situated before was You see the north is actually on the left side of the photo, so I put it at the top. But they took off, on runway 24 and started the left turn, but then they continued to turn left and then kept going to the northwest, and that's where all the huge mountains are. And they flew right into the mountains.
Yeah, and then they might well have lived if they obeyed the first of the GPWS warnings, but it didn't look like they did, and they only hit the ground 250 feet short of the peak. So if they'd just started a few seconds earlier, they probably would have got away with it. I'm going,
Yep.
Really? Oh.
Very crazy. All right. Well, let's continue with the craziness, shall we?
Bring it on.
Item B. Yeah. This one took part in another part of the world, in China. A Shanghai Airlines Boeing 737-800, registration B5131, performing flight 9194 from Shenyang to Shanghai, Pudong, China, landed on Pudong's runway 34 right, but bounced, touched down a second time at 5.37 degrees nose up. The pitch increased to 10.55 degrees 2 seconds later, and the tail contacted the runway surface. About another 2 seconds later, the captain instructed a go-around. The thrust was increased, and the aircraft climbed out to safety. The aircraft landed on runway 34 right without further incident about 12 minutes later. On April 6th, 2020, the Chinese CAAC reported the first officer occupying the left-hand seat was the pilot flying. Okay, let me say that again. The first officer occupying the left-hand seat was the pilot flying. The captain occupying the right seat, although not licensed as an instructor, was pilot monitoring. Following the balked landing, the crew engaged the autopilot, and while the autopilot was active, swapped seats, the captain returning to the left-hand seat, the first officer to the right-hand seat, both leaving their seats at the same time. In addition, the captain, I know, this is crazy. The captain was required to wear far vision correction according to his medical, but did not wear his vision correction. The regulatory agency's investigation believes the first bounce was caused by not retarding the throttle levers to idle, which only occurred following the bounce. The crew lost situational awareness, attempted to land the aircraft instead of a bounce recovery maneuver, which in turn caused the tail strike following the second touchdown. Okay, tail strike, but what is going on with the guys in the wrong seats?
Yeah, that's
Hey,
absurd.
quick, let's just switch back and no one will notice that we did anything wrong.
Nothing happened.
Nothing to see.
Yeah. If nothing happened, they never would have been caught. But why take that risk? Why do something this stupid? I mean, it's just stupid.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I don't like to use that word, but that is just stupid.
It's just plain stupid.
No, you're absolutely spot on, Dana. Absolutely. And it's criminally stupid.
Yes.
So I'm going, what the hell? I mean, we were so punctilious about having a man at the controls with his lap straps fastened. If you were changing seats, and you were doing the double shuffle where you had both guys were going to change position, you always had one bloke in the seat with his lap strap fastened at all times, and we were absolutely, that rule was never ever broken. No one even sneaked their belt undone a little early, because there's just no point taking the risk. You need to have somebody at the controls all the time properly fastened, and you were never allowed to sit in a seat you weren't qualified for.
No.
I mean, everything's backwards, back to front. And if you've flown a long time as a first officer, moving into the left-hand seat takes a lot of time. Well, I would say a lot of time. It takes time to orientate yourself to the fact that you're using different hands for different jobs now. And all those motor functions that you have ingrained, you know how to reverse. And it's easy when you're watching where your hands are going, but a lot of the time you can't do that in an airplane. You're looking out the window or looking at the instruments or whatever, and you've got to do it by muscle memory. So what on earth the guy thought he was doing, putting his first officer in the captain's?
Yeah, Nick, and being that I'm fairly of the crew here, the most recent to do such a transition from the right seat to the left seat on an aircraft that I'm very familiar with. That was a bit of a challenge to get used to that, because it probably took me a good, 150 hours, really getting that motor muscle memory down with my left hand and using my right hand for throttles, because I was doing the exact opposite forever. So, I mean, initially I was, comfortable enough to go out and fly the airplane as a captain, transitioning, I was comfortable enough, but it still took me some time to really not have to sit there and think about things. So just to go ahead and in mid-flight and decide, okay, I think I'll go ahead and try to fly in the captain's seat with, 150 people in the back of my airplane. That's just absurd. It's ridiculous. It's careless. It's reckless, and don't ever do it. Period.
Hey, man, you want to do something fun? Yeah,
Sure.
let's swap seats.
Yeah. Let's climb up to 45,000 feet, put the flaps out, and other stupid things that people have done. And you go, oh, come on, guys.
I can't tell you how many times, I've you sometimes you get bored in flight and you start looking around things. I wonder what happened and they go, oh, I'm not going to do it. I'm not even completely going, I don't know what's going to happen. Probably nothing, but you never know. Just leave it alone.
Right.
You want to see somebody jump out of their skin. If they dare even try to fall asleep, go up and reach up and hit the stall warning check. You can do stall. Yeah, you want to see somebody jump?
See, even then, it's like I'd be afraid to hit the stall warning thing, thinking that would do something to the airplane and make it actually go out of control.
Well, you'd end up like that Air Canada first officer who came out of a bit of a sleep in his seat, saw Venus, the planet, ahead of him, thought it was an airplane they were about to collide with, and before he was properly awake, grabbed the side stick and plunged the aircraft down, and half the passengers hit the ceiling. And I'm going, oh, for heaven's sake. Dear.
Not smart.
Yeah, no.
Not smart.
Just, if it's not a written procedure, if you're not authorized to do it, don't do it.
There's probably a good reason. You may not have worked it out yet, but dude, just
don't do it.
Tim Needham in the chat room says, nervous flyers, look away now. Well, I have news for you, Tim. Nervous flyers, you should not be watching this show.
Exactly right. Yeah. And while we're at it, Easter's coming up, folks, in the UK, where we're supposed to be staying at home. So stay at home, please.
Yes, Steph.
Oh, no, I was just going to say it's even more amazing to me that people would do things like this in a work environment. It would never occur to me to deviate from any sort of procedures in a work or professional environment.
That'd be like you.
I mean,
instead of doing it the way that I've been trained to do, I'm going to try this.
We're just going to try something totally different and see what happens.
Yeah, let's come in from your side instead. Let's let's not go through your back. Let's go through your side.
Pretty sure we're going to miss your kidneys with this approach. It'll be okay.
It'll be okay.
We'll just see what happens.
You'll be all right. Yeah, no big deal.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. Enough craziness with accidents on this episode, but we do need to talk a little bit. We do need to talk a little bit about the pandemic that's happening around us and how that's affecting our industry. So don't mean to bring it down a little bit, but let's just quickly knock this out. First item in the coronavirus news item is that Boeing has indefinitely extended their factory shutdown. And here's what it means for 30,000 workers. And I think this is the factory over there in Washington State. I'm not sure has the factory shut down in Charleston, South Carolina? I'm not sure about that.
I actually don't know. I haven't seen any news related to that. I could probably find out.
You would know because you're a South Carolinian, right?
Yeah, but all of my news comes from Charlotte, which is in North Carolina, so we don't always get all of that. But,
oh yeah, South Carolina. Those people.
They don't care about us just over the border. It's like we don't exist.
Anyway, 30,000 Boeing employees on Wednesday must start taking vacation or sick time or apply for unemployment after the region's largest private employer decided on Sunday to keep its Puget Sound plants closed indefinitely. Puget.
Greg Peterson chimed in. He said Charleston is shut down.
Oh, it is as well. Okay. The workers have been paid during the initial 2-week work stoppage that began March 25th when Boeing closed its local factories to grapple with the spread of COVID-19, the disease caused by the novel coronavirus. The company told employees Sunday in an email it's extending the temporary suspension of operations at all Puget Sound area and Moses Lake sites until further notice. Boeing has roughly 70,000 employees in the state. The decision affects about 30,000 of them, mostly production workers. Other employees who can work from home will continue to do so, and volunteer employees will continue to maintain the essential services at the plants. The company is paying the employees their regular salaries only through Tuesday, the 2-week mark of the shutdown, said Boeing spokesman Bernard Choi. From then on, employees not working can use paid time off, either vacation or sick leave. And I guess they can also apply for unemployment. And let's see, Boeing has $15 billion in cash on hand. That's a lot of cash. But it will need more given the breathtaking scale of the airline downturn. On Friday, a big airplane lessor, Avalon, canceled orders for 75 737 MAXs worth about $3.8 billion. Because of the delay in delivering the MAX, many customers will be able to cancel orders for that plane with no penalties. So they think that this is just the tip of the iceberg. Many other orders for that airplane are probably being canceled as we speak. Bad news for Boeing. And so, I mean, they were having a bad time before this coronavirus thing. And yeah, it's crazy. Up in Canada, Air Transat has temporarily suspended their operation. In total, more than 40 aircraft will be grounded, spread out between Quebec, Montreal, and Mirabel, and Ontario, Toronto, and British Columbia, Vancouver. This break, which we hope to put behind us soon, will enable us to come back stronger than ever. Resilience and tenacity are part of Transat's DNA, and they will allow us to get through the crisis, according to a spokesperson. Let's see. Although the situation is changing constantly, we remain confident that Transat's star will shine again. Turkish Airlines won't fly again until late April. So again, due to the COVID-19, many airlines have halted here in the United States service to New York City amid escalating coronavirus fears. American plans to operate just 13 flights a day out of JFK and LaGuardia and Newark from this week until May 6th, which is a 95% downturn of flights operated. United said it would reduce daily flights at Newark and LaGuardia from 157 to just 17. Delta Airlines is running just 15 daily departures from LaGuardia as the carrier slashes service there by more than 90% in April. 80%, let's see, Delta flights have also been reduced more than 80% from the planned domestic schedule at JFK and about 80% at Newark this month. Let's see, moving down, budget airlines Spirit has suspended flights through at least May 4th at LaGuardia and Newark, along with the airport serving Hartford, Connecticut, and upstate Niagara Falls and Plattsburgh. JetBlue will cut daily flights to and from local airports by as much as 80%. Major cutbacks from airlines here in the U.S. operating out of the New York City area, which right now is still kind of the epicenter for the coronavirus. I don't know if anybody has taken over that crown yet at this point.
Not yet, I don't think.
Not yet. Okay. And then a smaller carrier, Raven Air, RAVN Air, announced that due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the unprecedented loss of 90% of passenger revenue at all three of its airlines, which are Raven Air Alaska, Penn Air, and Raven Air Connect, it must, for the time being, park all 72 of its aircraft, stop all operations, temporarily laying off all remaining staff until the company is in a position to cover the costs of rehiring, resuming flights, and operating to the many communities it serves throughout the state of Alaska. Okay, so lots of bad news. And of course, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Many airlines all across the world have shut down or severely reduced their flying, including Acme. And we're just kind of waiting for this thing to run its course, and hopefully things will start improving sooner rather than later, and then hopefully we can recover from this economic disaster. There are some good news, though, good news articles. Here's one. You may have seen this on your local news or national news. A 16-year-old pilot flies medical supplies to rural hospitals. His name is TJ Kim. He can't play lacrosse because COVID-19 took that sport away, but at age 16, he can't drive alone, but he can fly. And he's turned his flying lessons into missions of mercy, bringing desperately needed supplies to rural hospitals in need. Each week, he carries gloves, masks, gowns, and other equipment to small hospitals. When he made his first delivery on March 27 to a 25-bed hospital in Luray, he was taken aback by the reception. They kind of conveyed to me that they were really forgotten about. Everyone was wanting to send donations to big city hospitals, he said. Every hospital is hurting for supplies, but it's the rural hospitals that really feel forgotten. So that's kind of cool. That let's see, he's a sophomore at Landon School in Bethesda, Maryland, and brainstormed with his family in McLean, Virginia, about ways to keep active and to serve the community while he had the time. They settled on Operation SOS, Supplies Over Skies. The most recent flight carried 3,000 gloves, 1,000 head covers, 500 shoe covers, 50 non-surgical masks, and 20 pairs of protective eyewear and 10 concentrated bottles of hand sanitizer to Winchester to help supply a hospital in nearby Woodstock. That's cool.
Yeah, great news. Glad to have that as the ending to all that other not so great news.
Right. I mean, there's so much. We could spend 3 hours just talking about all the bad news regarding this whole pandemic and its effect.
Is it me? Am I the only one that's really tired of hearing nothing but the news and the bad news that they keep on conveying on the news? So you want to know what? I haven't turned the news on.
It's probably good for your your psyche.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so tired of hearing about it. And as I said from the get go about social media and media driving this thing, and they are. It's just, you want to know what? I want to hear the good news stories. I want to hear the people that are surviving and reuniting, and I want to hear about private pilots taking the airplane to help out people out that are in need, or people that go in the extra mile. That's where humanity strives and usually excels, is helping one another.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear all this negativity.
All right.
I agree.
I think everybody agrees. So, well, let's just keep it on the up and up and positive and all that jazz, and start talking about what's been happening with everybody here on the crew. And let's see. Let's start in seniority order. Dr. Steph, how have you been?
I'm good. Not a whole lot going on here this week. Work has been slow, still working, so I still have some semblance of a normal schedule. Still doing the occasional procedure up in our one of our satellite offices, which is about the farthest location that we have from my house. But given that there's very little traffic now, it's really not taking me very much time at all to get there when I have to go up there. Doing a lot of video visits and telephone visits, and I think people are starting to get a little bit more comfortable with that technology, although some hiccups with trying to do the video visits we had planned for today. They kind of all turned into telephone visits. And that's about it for right now. I haven't done any more flying or anything since we last talked, but got a couple of days off this weekend. Tomorrow's a holiday for us, being Good Friday, so not actually doing any work tomorrow. And then back to work on Monday. But we'll see how the, it's gorgeous this whole week. Nice weather, like 80 degrees, sunny. Had a couple thunderstorms yesterday evening and this morning. But it looks like it's going to be cooler and perhaps a little bit rainier and grayer this weekend. So it might be a good weekend to just keep getting some stuff done around the house. We'll see.
And to go out and run in the rain, right?
Yeah, of course. That hasn't stopped.
No. All right. Well, good to hear.
Short and sweet update. So.
Yeah. Well, we like that. We can knock out more feedback if we keep this short and sweet. Nick, how are you? Are you still suffering from the whatever it is you've been suffering with the last 4 weeks now?
Yeah, and I'm still hacking away. Sadly, I thought midweek that a little earlier in the week that I was on the up and up, but I've sort of plateaued, and I'm still coughing my guts up at intervals. But I'm not feeling any other ill effects, so I'm obviously not going to worry the docs, and because I'm still breathing fine and everything else is good. So I'm just waiting for this cough to go, and it's a damn persistent thing. But apart from that, everything's fine and beautiful in my small world. Of course, the United Kingdom is pretty much, unless you're one of the essential services, required to go out and do your duty. The United Kingdom's pretty much on lockdown and will be for at least another 3 weeks. That's the news we recently heard. So it's, most of us are being good. There are a few who are not. And of course, they're the ones that are in the headlines as they go out into parks and go to the beaches and things. So the police are going to have to probably be out and about a lot more and try and keep control of those people who don't understand that it doesn't matter whether they put in themselves at risk or not, but much more importantly, they're moving this disease on to people who can't cope with it. And so while they are fit and young enough and they may well survive an attack, the things they do and the things they touch and the virus they spread around may well reach people who aren't in that position. And that's who we're trying to protect, the more vulnerable in our society. So I know everyone's saying it. I will just say it one more time. Please stay at home this Easter weekend, even though it's going to be a gorgeous weekend here and the sun's going to be out, it's going to be warm, and a lot of these people may not have gardens to go into where they can get a breath of fresh air, or parks nearby where they're allowed to go. So I do quite understand, but it's a few weeks. It's a few weeks of what might be a lovely year later on if we just bide our time and let it pass, and then the restrictions will ease and we can go out and celebrate and just slap ourselves on the back and say how clever we were.
We made it.
Yes, we made it through. So that's great. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm working away on plain tales and doing a few odds and sods to try and keep myself busy, but there's not a lot to do, quite honestly. Jilly keeps asking me to help with the housekeeping. I'm supposed to
too
be
busy
dusting.
doing other things.
Well, you guys have to keep giving me things to do.
They were those folks are counted as if the commercial folks anyway are counted as essential services still here. So I had the house cleaners in today. So
all right, okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're not.
Although they
allowed
were
to.
very good. They called ahead, made sure no one was sick, confirmed they weren't sick with anything, masks, gloves, and they're doing all the cleaning down of surfaces. So I figured that was a good thing.
I hope that the yard service people that I have
Not essential here.
They're not. I hope they are here because
Had to get the
my
lawnmower out the
lawn
other day.
is really looking bad.
Yeah.
Well,
we were like,
my
he
lawn's
hasn't been
getting
by
a
in a
bit
couple
bad.
weeks. What's going on? Oh, you
I
can't
need
help.
to get to the hairdresser, but not for another 3 weeks. So I'm going to look like a big white bush with a little baseball cap stuck on
I'm
top.
sorry. I
soon.
was talking about the garden.
Well, I was too. Yes, got to keep your garden trimmed.
Hey, I heard on another podcast, I don't know if this is true in all states here in the US, but podcasters are considered essential services.
Of course, we are.
Essential jobs.
Of course.
So you can go out there, as much as you want and go, hey, I'm a podcaster. Leave me alone.
Do we have to take our official ID for that?
Yes, make sure
case
you
we're
have your
stopped.
podcaster ID with you.
Gotcha.
I guess I need to make some up.
Exactly. Although I think we're going to hear from someone later on in the show if we get time that might suggest that podcast listening is on a downward trend in this, which surprises me because I thought you'd have more time on your hands. But apparently most of our listeners do it in the car when they've got nothing better to do.
Yeah. No, I think it has more to do with, just so I think we've talked about this before, and we're fortunate to do this and not need sponsors, and we do it just because we enjoy doing it. We're not on the commercial side of things, but for those folks who it's their job to produce content and make shows, those sponsors are the ones that are having trouble earning a living right now as well. So they're not turning that money into sponsorship money right now.
I would think that mostly because people are are fairly occupied at the home front, either doing projects at the house or dealing with the family, not having a whole lot of time to sit around on their own to listen to podcasts or listen to radio that you would normally do when you're in the vehicle or at work, trying to do work but have something in the background like my wife does all the time. She always has some type of radio going on in the background. So I think a lot of that's fallen off, and plus people just are probably the most part pretty down right now. That's why I need to stay positive. That's why I'm wearing this funny getup.
Yeah. Oh, I thought that was just your normal outfit.
No. Yeah,
it's just Thursday, so time to throw on the sombrero and the
just
party glasses.
Dana's Thursday outfit. I mean, we're so
why
used to
not?
seeing that. Well, speaking of Dana, how have you been, sir? What have you been up to?
I'm doing great. Other than continue to be taken off my trips. I would love to get out there and do a little flying, even though I know it is dangerous. Still, necessary people need to get into necessary positions. For example, doctors and nurses and medical staff and supplies and all that stuff. Still need people flying airplanes so they can get to the location they need to go. So I wouldn't mind helping out with that a little bit. Other than that, I've just been home finishing up my renovation that I started prior to this whole downturn. So I really wish I hadn't started that, because that was a lot of needed capital that went out the window, so to speak. But the master bathroom remod is almost complete, just waiting on a couple things, some shower glass, the doors have to be installed, and mirror, and the cabinet got to come by, and we're going to be pretty much done. So I've been very, very busy with that for the last better part of 7 weeks. So it's yesterday kind of my last day really working on it, and today I've kind of been lounging around. Weather's been beautiful here in Atlanta, as Jeff, I know Steph mentioned it, but it's been beautiful here as well. And that's pretty much it. Pretty short and sweet. Just hoping I get to go fly.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Dana, but all the trips that I had scheduled for this month have been 23K'd. That's a section of our working agreement, basically. And what that means is the trips are not operating, and we're kind of on the hook for recovery flying if that comes about. And the first one that I had that was in that status was this past week, and I didn't get called up to go fly. I did fly last weekend, however.
Yeah, I heard about that.
I flew, let's say, deadheaded on Friday night up to Columbus, Ohio. And then I was there all day on Saturday, and then flew back, operated the flight in the morning of Sunday back to Atlanta. And that's the only flying I've done in the last couple of weeks. So
yeah, it's crazy. I mean, all of my trips are the same scenario except for my last one of the month. I was hoping I was going to go on this one upcoming, because I do have a drinking problem, and that is the trip was going to be in Toronto for an overnight, so I was going to be able to go into Toronto's duty free and get my favorite Crown Royal Limited, which I can only get in duty free in Toronto, but that has been now since taken from me. So yeah, I'm down to one trip left that they have not taken off my schedule.
Well, have you checked recently?
Yeah, it's still there. I mean,
okay,
I check it daily.
Just yesterday, I noticed that every single one of my flights or trips for this month have been canceled. So
yeah, I still have the one trip that I would really like to get rid of. It's still on there. That's the 5-day trip. That is, yeah, it's ugly, and I don't want to fly it at all, because it's what is it here? I'm looking it up right now. Memphis, Daytona. I don't mind Daytona. I can go illegally walk on the beach, and then I get 30 hours in Providence. I have a funny feeling, because it shows me going Memphis to Atlanta, Atlanta to Austin. Well, then Austin is just Austin. Then next thing you know, I'm flying Pittsburgh back to Atlanta. So, unless I'm teleporting somehow.
Yeah. I don't think that trip is going to
Austin
fly.
and Pittsburgh.
Yeah, that might not work out so well. But
they're going to get rid of that one eventually, I think.
I think so. We'll see what happens. But the moral of the story is, I do, believe it or not, it's nice to have some time off. But truth be told, I love what I do for a living, and I really miss flying. So, and I really hope I haven't flown my last trip as a captain.
I don't think you have.
So we'll see.
Nah.
All right. Me, I just mentioned that I did that extra flying over the weekend, and then pretty much since then I've been hanging out here in the bunker. I've been self-isolating here because just in case I was exposed. I'm sitting right next to my co-pilot for hours at a time in a very enclosed space, and he's hoping that I'm COVID-19 free, and I'm hoping he is as well. The transportation for Sunday morning didn't happen. I think you've experienced the same thing, Dana. And so we Ubered from the downtown hotel to the airport in a very, very small, one of those Kia Souls or whatever, the really tiny little boxy cars.
Mhm.
And this guy's telling us about the fact that he's been really super busy carrying all kinds of people. And we're kind of looking at each other like, oh no,
You
what
could
were
have
we, what
not
were we
mentioned that.
thinking? Yeah, like who knows what kind of
Have you been
COVID-19
sanitizing your tiny
Yes.
car in between each trip?
Oh
Hopefully.
yeah, I didn't ask him that. I have a feeling not. So just as a precaution, I came home and I didn't even walk through the regular part of our house. I actually accessed the basement from the outside so that I wouldn't have any contact with my family, just in case. I don't want to infect them in case I'm carrying something that I don't need to be. So that was came home last Sunday, so it's Thursday, so it's been about 4 days, and that's pretty much it for me. Do want to mention that we have made the decision that our patrons at patreon.com not be charged anything for all of the shows that we put out for the time being, until things start improving with this whole pandemic and the economy starts going upwards. Because I know a lot of you have reduced or canceled your pledges for the show, and I know that a lot of people were probably thinking that that they might do the same, and I didn't want people to have to struggle with that decision, so we decided that we just wouldn't charge anything. And so if you're a patron, you are not going to be charged a thing until things start improving. And in fact, if you're not a patron of the show, Patreon, you can go over there and see what the patrons have been experiencing as far as access to our crew logs. And the 2 crew logs before all of this, I went ahead and opened up for the public. One was one that Nick had done, and the sailing adventure that Steph tells us about, that she kind of teased us about a couple of episodes ago. She did a special crew log about that, so that's available whether you're a patron or not. And then one that was just released, I believe it was yesterday, right? Nick, you did another one, an incident that happened about 59 years ago, a shoot down of a B-52 by...
Yeah, I was just looking at for possible plaintail subjects and found this, and I thought it's a great story where you guys shot one of your own bombers down. I there's a bit of Schadenfreude there.
Yeah,
I thought,
well,
Ray, we're not the only ones that can do that shit.
Oh no.
I thought that was good, but it was just too short to make into a full 18-minute, 20-minute plaintail. So I thought, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll knock it out as a little crew log. So I really enjoyed that story. It's sad that, of course, unlike on our incident, a few brave American servicemen died, but still, even so, it's a fascinating story.
Well, a lot of people out there that don't like the B-52, so this one just shot one down.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway, check it out, patreon.com/airline pilot guy, and you don't have to sign up, just kind of see what's going on over there, and it's free of charge. So just another reminder, we do have merchandise if you want to. Oh, and the other thing I want to mention is the fact that many of the people that had been giving regular contributions via Patreon decided to use the APG Classic method and contribute nice, generous contributions there, because they are not, at least not yet, affected by the economic downturn regarding this pandemic. So thank you very much to all of you who you didn't need to do that. You just
That's
Spend the
very
money
kind.
elsewhere.
Absolutely very kind.
And we're going to talk about those folks very, very shortly here.
I did forget to mention one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
My pontoon boat. Speaking about economic downturn, it's
Is
finally
it sunk again?
No.
Oh,
Be
hooray.
careful.
Anybody that's interested in buying a pontoon, reach out to me, Dana at Airline Pilot Guy.
There you
I'm
go.
actually finally going to get it listed. They finally fix it, and we're hopefully. I know it's the worst possible time ever to try to sell anything like that, but we'll keep our fingers crossed.
What about the APG parties this summer on the boat? Come on.
Dr. Steph offered her services.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Mm.
But she
I'm
doesn't
no
have a
longer
pontoon
needed.
boat.
I think she's just got a couple
There
of
is a
blow-up
boat.
swans and an old plank or two. We'll have
Well,
to build our own raft or
Yeah.
something.
I've got the boat. Don't worry if you want to come party. We have the pontoon boat has been upgraded. You know that.
Yeah, oh
Right.
yeah. I was talking about Steph's Lake.
Yes.
Yeah, and we were just giving you a bad time.
I know.
All right. Very good. So yeah, I guess you're serious about that, right? If you want to buy a tri-tune, triple pontoon boat thing, Dana at
Very comfortable,
airlinepilotguy.com.
very luxurious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had a good time.
Definitely
on it.
have a good party there.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm going to miss it, to be honest. I'm actually deciding which one I want to put up for sale. I may put the cruiser up for sale.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let us know. Keep us apprised. And let's go ahead and do a quick coffee fund.
Johnny, how much more coffee? No thanks.
I love coffee. I love tea. I love the APG community. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup.
All right. Coffee fund your way to support the show financially. But right now, don't worry about it. Just take a break. But a lot of people don't listen to me when I tell them that. And let me read a list of folks who have made contributions via the Coffee Fund Classic method. Brian Hanachek. How'd I do there, Brian? I think I got it. Stephen Wisniewski. I always mess up his name. William Driver. Michael Kwok. Kieran O'Leary. Robert Simmons from St. Benedict School in the UK. And Cindy Filco. Thank you, all of you. Again, you really didn't need to. We're okay. So they use the Coffee Fund Classic method to send us some contributions. And actually, we have a new executive producer at Patreon, Paul Marie. He just became a $5 per episode patron. So thank you, sir. Enjoy not being charged for the time being. Again, if you want to join the folks at Patreon, become a patron of the show, or just give a contribution via the classic method, please head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. You'll be glad you did.
Captain, incoming message.
All right, let's look at the feedback folder and see what is up first. Looks like a question from Dan. He says, I can't even tell you how stoked I am to have Miami Rick back. To anyone who isn't familiar with him, get ready. You thought it was a great show, and it was, but this guy kicks it up another notch or two. Another big fan of Miami Rick out there from Dan. Anyway, I have a question for Dr. Steph. I'm looking forward to an aviation career, and I'd like to fly the heavy metal. My problem is that I just can't hold my bladder for that long. Right now, I work in an office where I can use the facility as often as I need to, so that's nice. But I think I'd get shot by the cabin crew for making them block off the aisle like 4 times for a 4-hour flight. And he says that's an exaggeration, but not by much. So I can use the bathroom. So my question is, how do I get a bigger bladder? Anyone else who wants to chime in, please do so. Talons, Dan.
Hey, Dan, great question. Yeah, so let's say this first. It's not a terribly uncommon thing to have kind of an overactive bladder or have to go to the bathroom frequently, and that can be due to simple things like consuming a lot of fluids during the day. Some people just drink a lot of beverages. There's certain fluids that can make you feel like you have to go to the bathroom more often, diuretics, things like caffeine, alcoholic beverages, although if you're flying the heavy metal, hopefully you're not drinking those alcoholic beverages before you go fly. But I should put my little medical disclaimer in here first before we get into the things that you can try on your own. If you do have an overactive bladder, you need to go to the bathroom more frequently, especially if it's getting worse over time. That could be a sign of something more serious going on. It can be a sign of diabetes developing, urinary tract infections, other structural problems, tumors, stones, prostate problems in men. So if this sounds like you, if you're having trouble where it's getting worse over time, please go get it checked out by your doctor first. Don't just launch into the things that I'm telling you to do here. So assuming that none of those things apply to you, more serious things have been ruled out. There's a couple of things that you can do. It's not a bad idea first to kind of keep track a little bit more closely. So you may want to just put together a simple diary, and for a couple of days, maybe up to a week, just keep track of everything you do related to going to the bathroom. But that also includes making sure that you keep track of what you're having to drink. So how often are you consuming fluids, the volume of what you're consuming? That might give you a good idea of part of the problems that you might be having with this. But then you also need to keep track of how often you are going to the bathroom, but also, and this is important, how often you feel the urge to have to empty your bladder. So it might not just be that you're going to the bathroom frequently, it might be that you feel like you have to go to the bathroom more frequently. So keep track of that, and then you'll have a good idea of where you're starting from. And you can take a look at that information and say, okay, on the average day, I go to the bathroom this often, this many times. Healthy individuals tend to go to the bathroom to empty their bladder anywhere between 4 and 10 times a day. So that's kind of the normal range. You might find that you fit in that normal range. Might not be anything to worry about. But once you know all of that, then you can kind of go, okay, well, here's how often I'd like to go to the bathroom, or I'd like to be able to extend the interval to this period of time. So the first thing you're going to do once you have that information is make sure that you go to the bathroom and empty your bladder completely first thing in the morning. And then you can start your timer from there. So if you want to go an hour, 2 hours, that's your time frame. So when that time comes up, you actually want to try and go to the bathroom then. So don't just, if 2 hours comes up and you go, I don't really have to go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom anyway. So you can keep that consistent time frame going, those intervals. And once you're able to do that, for a couple of days or a week or so, pretty comfortably, and you're not having any trouble meeting those intervals, then you can increase it gradually. So maybe the next week you do 15-minute longer intervals until you get to the point where you can do longer and longer, and that helps train your bladder a little bit. There's other things you can do to try and train your bladder. You can work on pelvic floor strengthening exercises. Those are commonly known as Kegel exercises. Lots of people think that applies only to women, but that's not true. Men can do pelvic floor exercises as well. It's really important because those are your muscles that help support bladder function. So how do you know how to do Kegel exercises? So you have to identify those muscles, and basically to find the right muscles, you want to imagine that you're going to stop urination kind of midstream. So if you're going to the bathroom, you'll make that stop. So if you can contract those muscles, Jeff is practicing right now. Or you could alternatively, if that seems kind of difficult for you to figure out, it's the same muscles that would prevent you from passing gas. So helpful tips there. To do
I need
those,
to figure that out.
Yeah. Hopefully most people can figure out one of those two things to do. So then once you've identified those muscles, then you want to just exercise it like you would exercise other muscles. You're going to do sets or repetitions of contracting those muscles for periods of time, and then try and do it more frequently and for longer periods of time. So you can try it for 3 seconds to start. Some people find it easier to do if you're lying flat on your back. But after a while, you should be able to do them sitting, standing, or even while walking around. So kind of nice. You can train these muscles pretty much when you're doing any type of activity. Sometimes it's a good idea to do it more on a schedule. So if you're brushing your teeth or doing other chores, you can do them then as well. Ultimately, try to aim for maybe 3 sets of 10 repetitions a day to help train those muscles. So those are things you can do just to work on, improving your time between trips to the bathroom for that delta P.
And those Kegel exercises can be helpful for many other things as well.
This is true. This is true. Dan's question was about going to the bathroom.
Yes, it was. Yes, and so I should probably play this one.
Family show, ladies and gentlemen. Family show.
I must admit, I always found that when I was in the seat, in a sitting position, I rarely had a lot of need to go to the loo. As soon as I stood up, different matter. So, I could go quite, a long time sitting in the seat. But when I needed to change seats or get up and stretch my legs a minute, and then I was inevitably having to go to the loo. So I think if you're probably in the seat for a 2 or 3 hour flight, that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, and it's different for everyone. I find that when my mind is preoccupied by what I'm doing. So especially when I'm at work, even though I am up and moving around a whole lot at work, I'm just preoccupied and I don't think to go use the bathroom. But then again, I'm probably not drinking a whole lot during the day either, which is also not great. So keep yourself hydrated. There's no reason not to drink, not to stay hydrated. And I know Dana replied to you as well. I don't know if you want to read your reply there, Dana.
I don't. Yeah, I can just summarize it up, and that is that there's a few reasons why I try not to or end up not drinking a whole lot of water. And one of the reasons is post September 11th, even though you're allowed to leave the flight deck, it's not encouraged because it's a layer of security. So on the shorter flights, for us, Jeff and I, under 2 hours, generally speaking. I always just do what's called a PDP. It's called an emergency pre-departure P. It's a procedure we have to do. So generally speaking, that will cover me. Also, you got to realize that the humidity in an aircraft cabin isn't very high. It's actually very low. So unless you're drinking a lot of water, you tend to become naturally dehydrated when you're flying as a pilot because you're having the liquid quite literally taken out of you. There are days, there's big bottles of 1.5 liter bottles of water. I'll quite literally drink that. Now, if I pound it all at once, then obviously I'm going to have to go to the bathroom. And I generally try to manage my water intake throughout the day just so that I can, work around it. And just like Nick said, and work around the time when I would, not just around it, but time that I have available when I'm going to go to the bathroom, for example. So, when I'm on descent into a station, then I'll go ahead and start drinking some water to make sure I'm, get myself really fully hydrated. But like Nick said, as I'm sitting in the seat normally, unless I get up, I generally can go quite a long time without having to use the restroom. Being that said, as soon as I stand up, watch out because I'm making a break for that first class lavatory. Because
move out of the way.
It's time to go. So, but yeah, Dan, you think that you have to worry about it, but in reality, most of the people that I fly with, and even to a larger extent, which I'm not going to generalize, but generally women tend to go use the restroom a little more often than men. Not every woman, but I'm just saying in general, even the ladies I've flown with, I've never seen one leave the flight deck. So you go use the restroom. So yeah, that's my take on that.
Yeah, I find the ones that end up having to go more often are the ones that are drinking a lot of water because they've been, that's been drilled into their heads. It's a dry environment. You need to drink as much as you can. And I hardly ever drink. I drink a little bit of water, but I just let my body tell me when it's time to drink when I get thirsty.
And most people who are healthy can do that. You don't need to consume water beyond the point of not feeling thirsty.
Right. I noticed that if I've done exercise, I've gone out for a long walk or a run back when I used to run, and I show up into the cockpit, and I'm just thirsty. I can't get enough water. And then that's my body telling me you're dehydrated. You need to drink. But as I said, not as active as I used to be. And so I just don't need to drink as much water as I used to. And then of course, as you get to be older, I noticed that the other group of people that tend to use the bathroom more often than others are the ones that are getting to be in their mid to late 50s and 60s. And that's usually related, as Steph mentioned, to prostate issues.
Join us next week for bladder and urinary issues on medical/aviation.
A new podcast.
A new podcast.
Your bladder and you.
Exactly.
Oh no, we want to talk about excreta next week.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. Pass. We'll stick with the aviation.
I mean, we
stuff.
do that every week, I know, but have a special edition next week.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully that helped, Dan. And yeah, as you know, just kind of monitoring what you're drinking and then making sure you do that PDP right before you close the cockpit door for your flight. And then if you're flying the kind of trip segments that Dana and I fly, you should be okay.
And don't drink a ton of coffee.
Yeah.
You drink a lot
That's
of
the other
coffee.
thing. The guys that drink, like, you know, they order one of those venti, you know, coffees, like a thermos full of coffee. And I'm thinking, this is not going to be good.
Yeah. It's better than them showing up with a thermos full of baked beans.
Yes, that is true.
God,
Although
you've got
that doesn't
some
happen too
weird
often.
pilots working for you.
I mean, that's like one step away from like microwaving some salmon or something in the cockpit, right?
Yeah, you mind if I open up this can of tuna?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I do. Okay. Let's see. Item 2 in the feedback. We have some feedback from Ahmad in Nigeria. He says, "Hello, Captain Jeff. Please find attached my latest feedback." He said, "I hope it's not too long or heavy. I did a little intro theme like the unique ones you did for Dr. Steph, Miami Rec, Captain Dana, and Captain Nick. Please send my warmest regards to everyone on the show. Thanks, Ahmad." So here we go. Our feedback from Ahmad.
Tower to Delta Hotel 555. You are clear for takeoff. Roger, Tower to Delta Hotel 555. Acknowledging takeoff clearance. Over.
From Abuja, Nigeria, sending in some voice feedback. It's your one and only, Ahmad Dan Hamidu. Hello, APG family. Hope all of you are doing as great as I am, despite the challenging season. No thanks to a certain microscopic neighbor of the human race, running around trying to see if it can get humans to go where the dinosaurs went. It's been a while since I sent some feedback. I've been unavoidably busy trying to weather the skies of life in my part of the world. While trying to keep up with the podcast, I'm still way behind, but slowly catching up. My feedback for today is about an idea that came to my mind about exterior inspections during pre-flighting. Despite the standardized methods of thoroughly checking out an aircraft before flying it, you will all agree with me that there always will be areas on a checked aircraft that don't get checked, even with the strictest adherence to check flow. All because those areas are hard or impossible to reach without the aid of certain height or space assisting equipment. For instance, walkarounds can't give you access to the upper surface of the wings or stabilizers. Neither can you get a good peep into your pitot probes or static ports to see if a bug or chewing gum is blocking its orifice. You can't even check the integrity of that red blinker lamp on your airliner's dorsal side. How nice would it be if regulations were to allow flight crews to pop out from their pockets, those compact drones, and fly them around the aircraft, with one pilot flying the drone and the other pilot viewing the video feed from the drone's HD camera. Such a drone would be dedicated and restricted to exterior checks of the aircraft only. Once done, they would be flown down, recovered, deactivated, and stowed away for the next round of exterior inspection. What do you guys think of this? Should the FAA consider it? This is just one of my weird thoughts running rife in my restless mind, sometimes putting me in a brief trance-like state. So intense that my heartbeat rate gets altered mildly due to the eureka-like excitement over untested ideas. And that is my feedback for now. Until I catch another inspiring wave, here's wishing all of you, presenters and listeners, a safe transit through the global pandemic. Over and out.
Thank you, Ahmed. Very, very entertaining.
I love it. Absolutely love it.
What do you
a
think,
great
Nick?
idea.
You gonna get your little drone out there, and do the
I'd be doing naughty things with it though. I love the way your mind works, Ahmed. But to involve two of us in the walk around where normally it only requires one, well, I'm not too sure about that, because the other bloke's normally doing very important stuff up the front, and a walk around takes 15 minutes. And if you're going to use both of you for 15 minutes, that's 15 minutes that you're going to have to make up somewhere. So I'm not too sure about that. And quite honestly, peering down a pitot probe with a little camera on one of those little drones, you're not going to be able to see much. So I can't see that working terribly well. And I think, generally speaking, the pilots do a quick walk around, and it's more a confidence check than anything else. And we're looking for gross errors. We're not really looking to examine every square inch of the aircraft. We don't have time to do that. And certainly in my operation on a big jet, we have a team of engineers who will have inspected and certified the aircraft to flight. So really most of the inspection of the aircraft is done by them, and we're just doing it really as a bit of belt and braces. So I don't think it's really quite that important. The engineers may well, in the future, find a use for those for particular inspections, because I can see that if they want to inspect a panel at the top of a 50-foot fin, it would be a very clever way of doing it. But you'd probably need to be doing it inside a hangar in a safe environment, where if the drone went haywire, it didn't get tangled up with aircraft that are taxiing around with engines running, that sort of thing. So a little bit too complex for what is actually required, perhaps. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, as you said, I can see a couple of times where that drone might come in handy. For instance, you come out to the jet and you know that the night before there was a big thunderstorm system that went through and there was hail. There's potentially hail damage to the top of the airplane, or maybe the top of the horizontal stabilizer on a T-tail airplane like the one that Dana and I fly. And it'd be kind of nice to be able to kind of check out things that you cannot normally see from the ground. But and then regular kind of maintenance procedures inside of a hangar where it's all nice and controlled, I could see that as well. And I think actually there are companies that are already doing that around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we get memo after memo after memo about, especially during the wintertime, Jeff, is the unknown precipitation while the aircraft set overnight.
Mhm.
And it would be a real easy way for an inspection of the engine inlets, the top of the, top of the tail and top of the wings. It's sometimes really hard to get a very good look at the wings from the cabin to see if there's really frost on them, and especially if the light is hitting it just the right way. So, I think that a drone would be very useful in that case to inspect some surfaces that we can't easily see that have critical issues going on, especially that engine. The engine inlets, very difficult to see into them. And if anything, melted and froze back in there, that, becomes a real huge issue for the engine performance and also damage.
I guess the safety people would have to kind of, see if one outweighs the other. Does the risk, outweigh the capabilities that it gives you, or vice versa? So whatever the safest operation. Yes, Steph.
I was just gonna say I don't really struggle with this problem, because the aircraft that I fly are generally close enough to the ground that doing the walk around does not present any challenges in terms of structures that are too high to easily inspect.
That's true.
Nick, are you trying to say something?
With that in mind, Steph, I'll
Yeah.
just start here again and not embarrassing myself at all. Was it my finger
pretend,
you
nothing
noticed?
And your mouth moving.
Yeah, we saw your mouth going right around. I think.
Rather than have an airplane that's small enough to just peer over, why don't we have those jet boots that we can fly around the aeroplane.
I like that
So
idea a lot.
that's a much nicer idea than a drone. So we just strap on a
And
walk
not at
around pair
all
of jet boots,
unsafe.
and then we can just jet around and hover around the aircraft and look to ourselves. And that way you can actually touch the wing and the tailplane, the top of your T. You can waggle the elevators up and down. That'd be a great idea.
That'd be a lot of fun too.
So Ahmed, I like your idea, but you didn't take it far enough.
Yeah.
You need to.
Now
dream
the
more
drone
vividly.
is sounding very safe and like a great plan in comparison to Captain Nick's ideas.
No, jet boost, way to go. Got to do it.
Yes,
All
Liz.
right.
Now Nick gets sucked into the engines, not just the drone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
gonna
well,
be
that
messy.
wouldn't hurt me. It would just wreck the engines.
I'm going to quickly, or try to quickly do this. This is a long piece of feedback from Anonymous, and then after that, we're going to go do the plain tale for this episode. So, item 3. Hello, my favorite aviators. I wanted to share my story with you all about the process of getting my third-class medical. For obvious reasons, I prefer to remain anonymous. Back in 2014, I had a friend commit suicide, and that affected me and my judgments. Shortly after that, I received a DUI for blowing a .1 after leaving a concert. The police also found a glass pipe, which went into the police report. I dealt with all of that. It was expensive and a pain in the APU exhaust. In early 2019, I wanted to start taking flying lessons. Didn't really think my medical was going to be an issue, so I kind of blew it off until my CFI started pestering me about my first solo. I figured it would be a trip to the doctor office, and that was it. I learned my lesson really quickly. I was deferred for a few reasons, the biggest being the DUI, next being a small bout of depression from previous episodes, and a muscle relaxer I take for my scoliosis. My AME explained to me that I will get through this with his help. He wrote a note about the muscle relaxers, and that ended up being the least of my worries. The first letter from the FAA came within 2 weeks. Came with a 2-page list of the things they wanted, including all court documents, 10-year driving record, letter from the diagnosing physician about the depression, a letter from me explaining my alcohol use. I really don't drink, like ever. And they also wanted 3 professional references that explain my level of responsibility. They wanted this within 60 days of me receiving the letter. My depression was diagnosed from a doctor at my university clinic. I called them and they barely had any records of my visits, period. So I ended up scheduling an appointment with my general care doctor. She read the letter and was incredibly confused, but we ended up agreeing that a letter from her stating that I'm not depressed was going to be all she could do. Next step was going to the courthouse to get all my court records. They literally lost my plea bargain and the proof of classes that I took. I asked for certified copies of the entire court record, and that ended up costing me about $60. And she, the court clerk, was not happy, as I caught her right before lunch, and it took a good hour to get everything copied. I called my attorney at the time, and they immediately couldn't find the proof of classes either. His idea was to pay him for an hour so he could investigate the company I took the classes from. But the company was closed. So he ended up calling a friend to find the old owner, and the document was finally produced. Surprisingly, if you want a 5-year driving record from the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, that's around $20, but a 10-year copy is free. And an agent in my state personally emailed me my complete, almost whistle-clean driving record. I submitted this giant bundle of paperwork to the FAA, and I remember taking a picture of how thick the sheets were. After waiting 3 months, I came home from work and noticed that I missed a certified letter. It's like 5:30 in the evening at this point. The website says that the post office closes at 6, but they really close at 5. I ran down there in a dead-on sprint, and the place was closed. A postal worker leaving for the day told me to come back the next day, but I begged her to help me get this letter. This was actually a mistake of mine. I signed for the letter, and she noted the date and time of me receiving it. I opened it up, and it was a notification from the FAA stating that I have 48 hours to submit for a 5-panel forensic drug screening. In a nutshell, that's literally all the information they gave, that and a pre-addressed envelope. I worked in a job where we have weird hours, but are critical once assigned to a job, and I happened to be working very long days the next few days, so I quickly realized I had to get that done that night. I hit the Google very hard trying to find out everything I could as quickly as I could. After trying all the typical drug testing places, none were open. My AME just went on vacation, so I couldn't contact him or the office, and it was too late to contact my general practitioner. About 9:30, I remembered that I had to take a drug test for a DOT physical to drive trucks, and that was also a 24-hour urgent care facility. I got there, they read the letter, and they were confused as all get out. They made various phone calls. They called their bosses at home, text message, anything to make sense of this letter. Then they think that they're out of tests anyway, so after an hour at the office, one nurse finds an old expired test in some back storage area. Whatever. I took the test. Oh, yeah, I was sitting on the pre-addressed envelope and sweated it shut. It was summer. They sent it off to Quest Labs. Quest Labs analyzed the test, and I passed, of course. They've got to have some of the worst customer service I've ever experienced in my life. They refused to send the results to a standard FAA medical address and kept asking me which airline I worked for. They were complete idiots, to say the least. The urgent care was amazing. I went back there and explained what was going on, and they went through a lot of hoops to get a copy of the results to mail to the FAA. We had no idea if any of this was going to work at all. Luckily, I had insurance at the time because I only had to pay $50 copay for the urgent care. The cost of the test was actually about $750. I still don't know how that was covered by insurance, but cool. About 4 months later, I got a shiny new printed piece of paper with the blessing of the FAA that I'm physically and mentally suited to pilot and command a Cessna 172. I passed the solo stage check, got really busy with work again, and then COVID hit, absolutely obliterating the entertainment business, resulting in my immediate termination of employment, which means no more flying for a while. I wanted to share this for any pilots who might have had some trouble in the past as well. There really isn't a lot of information online about this topic, but I am proof that it is possible with honesty and lots of paperwork. I remember Dr. Steph joking about applying to be an airline pilot in a recent episode, assuming she had the hours and other requirements. How would her doctorship affect her employment possibilities with a major airline such as Acme? Would Acme try to match a doctor's salary or even see that as a desirable trait in a pilot? I couldn't see why not. Also, assuming that we're back in the pre-COVID-19 economy with the pilot shortage. Thank you, captains. I will not be offended if you can't fit this lengthy feedback in. Well, I try to read it really, really fast, Anonymous. But Steph, what do you think? Do you think you could get on with Acme and they would pay you whatever your equivalent salary is as a doctor?
Well, Anonymous, who said I was joking, first of all? No, I'm just I don't think they would pay me my doctor's salary. I don't, yeah,
nope.
I would not. Nope. And I can't even think of a good reason why.
You wouldn't want to take a pay cut then?
Let's just say if I was going to be flying for a career at that point, it would not be about the money. Let's just say that.
Right.
Which, I think for a lot of folks, the money's a nice perk of having a career in aviation, but it's not the only reason why they do it. So
no, not for most of us.
Not for most. Yeah. Would it be a desirable trait to have a pilot or have a doctor as a pilot? We talk a lot about from a lot of the things you have to go through to prove your worth to be hired as a pilot have to do with being responsible and being able to follow through on your commitments and things like that. So that's why, having a university degree is such a big deal. So I think from that standpoint, it would be a positive.
Yeah, we in the Air Force used to have doctors that joined and went through all the pilot training and then did one entire tour on the front line and then resumed their doctor's duties as aviation doctors in the Air Force. And they were, of course, perfect, really great blokes because they had seen both sides of the coin and they were fantastic. The Air Force, I can't really afford to do that anymore. But in the old days, I think it was a great idea.
Yeah,
sure. Liz brings up the good point. Familiar with checklists? Yes. And I've talked before about how aviation and medicine kind of two sides of the same coin sometimes in terms of the way we think and do things operationally. So.
Yeah. I can see a day when you would be like some of the pilots I've flown with in my outfit who were very wealthy and did the job
I
for
hope that day
fun.
comes soon. I don't know.
Yeah, so do I. Because I mean, they basically made enough money in whatever they used to do before, and then got bored with that and decided to become airline pilots. So the job was like a sideline, and they did it for fun. And they were the most fun people to fly with. They were great, often very professional, but just had a really kind of
But there for the love of the job.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And didn't really get wound up about anything. It was super.
Exactly.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, Anonymous, for your telling us about your experience getting your third-class medical. It seems like it was quite a hassle, but maybe some encouragement for people out there who are running into the same type of issues.
Oh, a very
and
honest letter, and really, I think, very valuable to a lot of people. Thanks.
Yeah, and I know we got to move on, but I know we've talked about it in the past where, excuse me, sorry, I'm getting whatever Nick has is contagious here now. Don't do that into the microphone. Now we've all got it right through my headphones. We've talked to be perfectly honest, we've talked about in the past where folks have had issues with getting their medical for one reason or another. Obviously, this is one that no one wants to have to deal with, but a good place to start always is with your AME. Be honest and upfront with everything, and there's a lot that they can get you through. Not everything has to be is completely cut and dry. Yes and no, you won't be able to fly.
So true. All right. Well, with that, we're going to go ahead and move
It's
to
true.
It's true. Yeah.
Sorry, I was a bit late coming in there.
Oh, here.
Oh, that's true.
It's time now for the best part of the show, which is the old.
Are we finishing?
The end of the show. That's the best part of it.
That is the best part of the show.
It's almost over. Trust me.
Now what am I going to do for the rest of the week?
All right. Let's listen to this week's installment of The Plain Tales. And this one, I'm not even going to try to pronounce.
The Old Pilot's Plain Tales. The Battle of Ashau. It had been early in the Vietnam War that the Ashau Special Forces camp was built in the valley of the same name, about 30 miles southwest of Hue, only a mile and a quarter from the Laos border. The valley was important to the Viet Cong because it formed a bridge between the Ho Chi Minh Trail and the populated coastal area of Tura Tien province. The camp was established in 1963, and when the battle started in 1966, it was defended by 17 Greenberries, a mobile strike unit of special forces, and around 400 South Vietnamese irregulars. The camp had received intelligence from North Vietnamese defectors that 4 battalions of the Viet Cong 325th Division, some 2,000 troops, were planning to attack, and on the night of the 8th of March, the first assault was launched. Poor weather initially prevented air support, so although beaten back at first, the North Vietnamese army continued to attack despite heavy casualties. On the 9th, after a fierce mortar bombardment which reduced many defensive positions to rubble, more attacks followed, but this time US air support was able to assist. It was far from ideal, since the weather put the American aircraft below a low cloud base. At that altitude, they suffered withering ground fire from the Viet Cong. A USAF AC-47 spooky gunship was downed, and supply drops meant for the camp, which landed outside the perimeter, couldn't be retrieved. The next day, another wave of enemy troops attacked with recoilless rifle fire and mortars, and an assault team that broke through the perimeter and had to be beaten off in hand-to-hand combat. Throughout the day, American forces provided air support hitting enemy positions around the camp, and it was during one of these missions that Dick Andrews looked down from the cockpit of his Spad, more formally known as the Douglas A-1 Sky Radar, as the scene unfolded below him. A short distance from the battle around the camp, he was watching an act of courage that would be recognized as one of the bravest feats of the Vietnam War. He thought momentarily of his friend, fellow pilot, and commander of the 602nd Air Commando Squadron, Richard Wilsey, whose men were fighting for their lives below. Dick was flying top cover for those pilots that day, and it was a memory that he shared with Wilsey that came flooding back to him. It was in 1944, during the Second World War, and the day after his 20th birthday, that Andrews had been flying a P-38 Lightning over the Polesti oil fields of Romania. His squadron had been dive bombing, and Wilsey, the 96th Fighter Squadron's operation officer and one of the most experienced pilots in the group, had been hit by enemy ground fire. An anti-aircraft shell exploded next to his cockpit, and shrapnel hit his head, whilst other shells tore into his aircraft, throwing it about and lifting his feet off the rudder pedals. Wilsey already had 60 missions under his belt and had downed an Me-109 and a Blumenvoss 238 massive six-engine flying boat, but it looked like this might be his last flight when his left engine started streaming oil. He feathered the prop, but then noticed that his good engine was leaking radiator coolant, and he knew that within a few minutes it would also fail. Already he couldn't maintain altitude, and he called his flight group to tell them that he was going down. Andrews, on only his 11th mission, was on Wilsey's wing that day and called for him to pick a good spot. "I'm coming down after you." Dick wondered for a moment what Andrews meant, but he was too busy setting up for a forced landing to work out what the youngster had in mind. As the rest of his squadron fought off a group of German fighters, he picked a farmer's ploughed field, and whilst his remaining engine coughed and spluttered, a fresh hit smashed his windscreen, blooding his forehead. But he managed to get the wounded Lightning over the last obstacle before landing the aircraft on its belly along the furrows of turned earth. As the fighter bucked and heaved on the uneven ground, he put his head forward onto the padded gun sight, but still took a beating to his face before the aircraft skidded to a halt. He clambered out of the fighter and grabbed a small phosphorus grenade, which he threw into the cockpit, setting the wreck alight. As his beloved P-38 burned, he spotted a truckload of German troops approaching from the tree line, and then he was buzzed by more Messerschmitts. He could hear the whine of rifle fire passing close by, but then came the more familiar sound of another aircraft, and he turned in amazement to see a P-38 with gear and flaps down, touching down onto the soft earth. The moment that he realized his leader was in trouble, Dick Andrews had made up his mind to help. Wilsey was going down into a hornet's nest of enemy troops, but that didn't change his mind, and Andrews lined his Lightning up on the same field, setting the flaps and undercarriage. Then he realized he was too close, so raised his gear and eased the aircraft round through 270 degrees and tried again. This time he was better set up, and he made a good landing across the furrows and managed to stop about 100 feet from a cornfield. He quickly pulled his flaps up and then positioned them for takeoff, set the engines at 1800 RPM, and put the park brake on. As soon as he realized what was going on, Wilsey started running towards Andrews' aircraft, and as he got there, he saw Dick was out on the wing, throwing his parachute away and dropping the folding ladder. Andrews held his hand down to help Wilsey up onto the wing and shouted, "You fly!" How they both fitted into the cockpit was a miracle. It was a good job that they were slender young men, but Dick Wilsey got in the front and sat as far forward as possible, whilst Dick Andrews slid in behind him with one leg over Wilsey's shoulder and the other down under his left arm. Within seconds, the two Dicks had the cockpit closed, and Wilsey set low pitch, held the stick back, and eased the throttles fully open. As they started bumping over the soft ground, the nose wheel started digging in, but with two of them in the cockpit, Dick couldn't get the stick far back enough, so he wound the trim to full up, the wheel lifted clear, and they started rolling. They rushed towards the trees at the end of the field, and it didn't look like they would make it, but a well-timed selection of combat flap helped them to lift off, and they scraped over. Wilsey said later that he was glad those trees hadn't been 10 feet taller. What followed was an uncomfortable 2.5 hours of flight to their Russian refueling base at Poltava, but they kept their spirits up, joking and kidding with each other, and Andrews managed to swab the bleeding Wilsey with iodine. When they climbed out, the crew chiefs were amazed to see two of them get out of the same cockpit. For a couple of days, they returned to Foggia, their base in Italy, and were greeted like celebrities. As young Dick Andrews stepped out of his aircraft, he was greeted by General Nathan Twining, who awarded him an immediate field promotion to second lieutenant and pinned the Silver Star for gallantry onto his chest. Now, 22 years later, Dick Andrews was flying over the Battle of Ashau and feeling déjà vu as he saw what was going on beneath him. The actors below playing out the scene of extreme bravery were Bernie Fisher and Jump Myers. The fight for survival in the Ashau Special Forces camp had not been going well. Despite large losses, the North Vietnamese outnumbered the Americans and their allies, who were running short of ammunition and had also received a number of casualties. The nearby airstrip had been overrun, but the Spads from the Air Commando squadrons continued their air attacks. Major Dafford Myers was leading a flight of Sky Raiders, strafing and dropping ordnance on the enemy troops when his engine was hit by ground fire. With the massive motor dead and flames licking around his cowling, his heart sank. He got a call that he was on fire and burning clear back to his tail. Realizing that he was going down, he was already too low to abandon his Spad, so he decided to crash land the machine. Jump, as he was known, knew that going down into the jungle was the worst option. His only chance of survival was to use the runway that served the camp, one made of pierced steel planking, but now controlled by the North Vietnamese. He dropped the rest of his bomb load and lined up with the jungle strip for a wheels-up landing. On touching down, his Spad skidded sideways for nearly 600 feet before hitting a bank and bursting into a large ball of flame. Those above assumed the worst and that Myers must have perished. Indeed, that was the call that was made back to command, but then the smoke momentarily cleared, and Jump was spotted running across his wing out of the inferno and getting into a ditch behind the bank. Overhead, leading a Spad flight from a different unit, was Major Bernie Fisher. Bernie was a modest man, wholly lacking in the flyboy swagger that was common amongst combat pilots. He used to be a scoutmaster who loved aviation, sometimes flying over camping events and dropping sweets and candy onto the delighted scouts below. He volunteered for duty in Vietnam and flew some 200 combat missions during a period when the casualty rate amongst his fellow pilots rose as high as 40%. A fellow aviator described him as a family man who didn't drink or smoke, and the strongest swear word he ever used was shucks. works. Bernie had seen Jump survive, and he started to coordinate a rescue helicopter. But after 10 minutes, when he asked where the chopper was, he was told it was still 20 minutes away. In the meantime, the Spads had been attacking the Viet Cong troops who were intent on capturing or killing Jump Myers, trying to hold them off. One veteran of the battle later likened it to flying inside the Yankee Stadium with all the people in the bleachers firing at him with machine guns. Bernie realized that, regardless of their efforts, Myers was going to be overrun, and despite not even knowing the man, he decided to land and pick him up. His fellow aviators tried to dissuade him, but he was adamant. Control told him the strip was about 3,300 feet long, barely long enough for a Spad, but in reality it was only 2,500 feet. He came in through smoke and fire at about 95 knots and touched down, slipping and skidding on and off the strip, and then, as he came up to the end, he realized he couldn't stop. He ran off the runway with red-hot brakes, damaging a wing and the tail section, almost careering into a fuel dump. But luckily, as he swung his aircraft around, his wing passed over most of the barrels of fuel. He pointed back down the runway and taxied along it, skirting all kind of debris, until he saw Myers make a fierce sprint towards the aircraft. Bernie lost sight of him in the smoke and thought that he must have been hit, so he set the brakes and unstrapped to help him, but then Myers jumped up onto the wing. "Nobody's ever seen an old man like me run so fast in his life," Myers, then 46, said later. Two other Sky Raiders raked the area with bullets, reportedly killing a North Vietnamese only a few yards from the running pilot. Bernie grabbed Jump Myers' flight suit and pulled him head first into the Sky Raider, spun around and sat on him. It was hard on his head, but he didn't complain, Bernie said. We didn't talk much, but he kind of looked up and gave me a weak smile and mumbled something like, "You're one crazy son of a gun." Bernie Fisher later admitted, in his quiet way, that he thought they were in serious trouble, but he gunned the 18 cylinders of his mighty Wright Cyclone engine and set off down the strip, barely managing to get the Spad off the ground in time. The aircraft was taking all sorts of fire as enemy soldiers peppered the machine. Then Myers, slathered in mud, oil, and soot, asked for a cigarette. "Sorry, I don't smoke," came the reply. After Major Fisher returned to his base at Pleiku, the ground crew counted 19 bullet holes in the aircraft. Meanwhile, the Battle of Ashau continued, but as the situation became more desperate, the decision was finally made to evacuate. Abandoned equipment was destroyed, and 15 Sikorsky H-34 Seabats, supported by 4 Iroquois gunships, flew in. Sadly, the helicopters were mobbed by South Vietnamese soldiers and civilians and became so overloaded that the special forces were forced to throw some of their allies off so that they could get airborne. 2 of the transport helicopters were lost to ground fire. After the battle, only 5 American ground troops were declared missing, but somewhere between 200 and 300 South Vietnamese troops were killed or missing. The U.S. estimated that 800 Viet Cong were killed. Jeff Underwood, historian of the National Museum of the United States Air Force at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio, said the battle in the Ashau Valley was ultimately a victory for the North Vietnamese, but he also said that the engagement and Major Fisher's bravery helped boost morale for fellow airmen and for soldiers sent to similar dangerous and isolated outposts. Bernie Fisher was often asked why he took the risk. landing on an airstrip littered with debris, surrounded by hills and bristling with guns, to save a man he barely knew. He replied that a comrade in arms was about to be killed, and he believed that he could save him. It's important that you respond to your feelings when the time comes for it, he said. On his return to the United States on the 19th of January 1967, he was presented the Medal of Honor by President Lyndon B. Johnson in the White House ceremony. He was the first living Air Force recipient of the medal, all previous awards having been posthumous, and the first USAF member to receive the medal in the Vietnam War. Of note, Fisher had already earned a Silver Star the previous day, whilst flying support for the same battle. It turned out that Jump Myers had been promoted to Lieutenant Colonel that morning and didn't think he would ever put his eagles up, but thanks to Bernie Fisher, he got the chance. Myers called Bernie Fisher every year on the anniversary of the rescue to wish him well, and after he died in 1992, his daughter kept up the tradition for 22 more years. Bernie Fisher passed away in 2014 at the age of 87, but his Skyraider, number 32649, is on display at the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio.
Wow, another stunning crew. I was going to say crew log, plane tail. Oh, hang on. I hear somebody's at the door. I think somebody from Imperfect Foods is dropping off something.
Another delivery.
Yeah.
Where are you going to stick this one, Jeff?
Yeah, and some kind of a fissure.
Yeah, probably. You know, I just get such a kick out of stories like that because you had so many brave people doing so many brave things during the Vietnam War, and it ended in such a shambles that people forget such enormous acts of heroism that occurred. And for me, they're just little nuggets of gold when I can find them. And the fact that you had the two pilots that were involved in the first incident, one was the CO of the Guy's squadron, the other one was actually airborne over the top of the second rescue, I just think is an amazing coincidence. And what a fabulous story to find. I was so lucky.
Did you happen to see that Skyraider at the U.S. Air Force Museum last July, Nick?
Yeah, I know. I didn't, and I wish. Now that I found the story that I had sorted out and taken a look at it, I would have spent, just a few minutes gazing at it, reliving that story, and how much I want now to go back and find it again, and just spend a few moments thinking of how brave Bernie Fisher was and what an amazing feat of flying that was to get into that little airstrip and out again safely.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you for sharing those stories with us, as you always do, because certainly I don't know a lot of those, and I don't know that many people do. So
I love bringing them to people's attention, and the more intimate they are and the rarer they are, the more it gives me satisfaction. So people often suggest stories that are actually quite well known, and I love the idea. But it's the ones that people don't know about, have perhaps forgotten about, I think are little treasures from my point of view.
Yeah, expand our knowledge.
Yeah.
The things that didn't get the recognition they needed in the first place.
Very much so.
And perhaps they did at the time, but as time goes on, a lot of the stories are just set aside and forgotten.
Yeah, exactly. So I love the chance to be able to bring them back to people's attention. Glenn said he spent 3 days in that museum, and he reckons he saw the aircraft but didn't know the story. So I'm so glad that I've been able to relate it.
Well, the next time we go, we'll know the story and
I want to
appreciate
go
that
back.
even more.
definitely want to go back.
All right. Meetup whenever we get to do the meetups again, right?
Sure, you bet. Yeah, 100%.
All right. Well, you know what? We're right at that, just beyond the 2-hour point, and we're going to try to, do some more tomorrow. So we're going to go ahead and make that it for part 1 of ABG 420 today. So if you're watching this video, please stay tuned, and you should see another one that says part 2, and we'll carry on from there.
Indeed.
Excellent.
So
do you want us to say goodbye, or do we just stop talking?
I think we just stop talking, unless is everybody going to be here tomorrow or not?
I'm fit and able.
Yeah,
Me too.
I'm around.
What time?
About 1 o'clock-ish. But we'll say goodbye, Dana, just in case you're not back tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a 2:30 doctor's appointment, so.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So I'll be here for about an hour.
No, if you got 2:30, it's a dentist appointment.
You're too dirty.
If I'm too dirty.
Sorry.
If I'm too dirty. Wow. Oh, he's so just funny.
Yeah, I know.
Funny, honey. Okay. Well.
Okay.
Hey.
Well.
Hasta la vista, baby. We'll see you next time.
There you go.
Guys.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining us today, and we'll see you tomorrow. Okay. Same time, same channel.
Excuse me.
Same channel. Whole time until just now.
Join us.
Wow. For some reason, I really feel like I need to pee.
Delta.
Another good tip. Maybe don't listen to
Delta P.
Sound of rushing water or water.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to end the broadcast. We'll see you part 2. Bye.
Bye.